Hello Internet and welcome to this day in history for the 9th of November. Now, there is a lot I can talk about on the 9th of November, and specifically I'm sure certain people is going to ask me, while I'm not covering probably the most single famous event of this particular date, namely Kristallnacht, the public pogrom against Jews in 1938 in Nazi Germany. And the reason I'm doing this is because, first of all, I will have something to talk about next year, but also because I don't actually think it's the most worthwhile event to talk about today. While definitely a horrible thing that should be discussed and remembered, I think it's far more relevant that it was on this day in 1918 that Wilhelm II of Germany abdicated as emperor of the German Empire, which was at the same time abolished to make room for a new democratic republic, which we today of course remember as the Weimar Republic. However, beyond what this meant for the end of the First World War and the development of the political status quo of the early 20th century up until the Second World War, what the abdication of Wilhelm also signified was far more than that. It signaled the end of the political system and social system that had more or less been in place in Europe since the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Now, of course, there is absolutely no way anyone could, even without knowledge of history, could have in any way mistaken the society of the 7th century AD for that of the 19th century AD. It was certainly not a static society. There were developments all through the system, but the concept of a ruling monarch ruling either by the grace of God or by the consent of the governed, or at least the consent of the nobility, or however you want to put it, combined with fairly stratified social classes and all acting under a certain set in stone social contract as to how to act in certain situations, how to react towards certain people, and how certain classes should react regard for the individual, was mostly the same from the fall of the Roman Empire in close to 500 AD and up until the end of the First World War. Rarely has any conflict, or in fact any event, any single event, meant such a change in social structure. I suppose we would have to go back to the moment humanity became capable of abstract speech to find something that similar. Many historians have written books, of course, upon the social upheavals in the aftermath of the First World War, and I'm absolutely certain that the people at the time did not understand just how big a change that had occurred. But far more than anything else, the development of our modern day beliefs about individuality and worth in a society stems from this moment. Yes, I realize the American Revolution, the establishment of the United States, plus the French Revolution had already established some kind of principles, though of course we all know that the French Revolution ended up with a far more powerful dictatorship in Napoleon than even Louis XIV and his ancien regime had ever thought of even trying to impose upon the general public in the French domains. But the end of the First World War and the abdication of Wilhelm was the moment that we entered our modern era. Far more than any other moment in history, this was a dividing line between what had come before and what was to a certain degree pushed to the back, never to be used again, and to what we have today going forward. And that was symbolized, though not in fact, of course, caused by Wilhelm's abdication on the 9th of November 1918 and the armistice that was signed just a few days later on the 11th. So, I hope this has been of interest to you, this day in history for the 9th of November, the abdication of Wilhelm II, Emperor of the Great German Empire, and the end of the First World War. Until next time, I have been the Sage, and I wish you all a very happy day.